or declaring the 5 crew members aboard the refueling plane are dead. The 2 Marines aboard the fighter jet were recovered, but one of them later died. What caused that collision is under investigation. The search for a flight instructor missing from Colorado for 2.5 weeks continues. 29-year-old Kelsey Barrett last seen Thanksgiving Day.
We've executed search warrants on Kelsey's home as well as both of her vehicles. We are treating Kelsey's disappearance as a missing persons case at this time. We have not identified anyone as a suspect and are asking the public for any information that might help us find her.
Woodland Park, Colorado Police Chief Miles DeYoung says the woman's mother also issuing an emotional appeal for help in locating her. Several congressional Democrats seizing on the sentencing documents for Michael Cohen, the president's former lawyer, to once again raise the specter of impeachment.
Some Democrats say the payments to women claiming to have had affairs years ago with the president could be an impeachable offense. House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy told the Fox News Rundown it would be stupid on the part of Democrats to try to impeach President Trump over campaign finance violations.
Campaign finance problems are usually fines, which a number of members have.
President Trump tweeted that Democrats are calling a simple private transaction a campaign contribution and says former attorney Michael Cohen is lying to get a reduced sentence.
Fox's Rachel Sutherland in Washington. The Democrat leaders in Congress will meet with the president in the morning. Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer will talk border wall funding and immigration reform 10 days out from a possible partial government shutdown. Another volatile day on Wall Street, the Dow plunging more than 500 points early, recovering to close 34 points higher. This is Fox News.
Whether you love history, nature, scenery, or good food, Jeff's Pirates Cove is the place to be. Originally established as Pirates Cove in 1953, it's the oldest remaining beach bar and restaurant in Guam. Located on Guam's rugged southeast coast, visitors for years have discovered the natural beauty wrapped in deep history. Come out and walk the entire 22-acre site. Stop by the Seaside Museum for a taste of local history and experience Jose's international menu with open-air dining. Stop by and see what you've been missing. Jeff's Pirates Cove in historic Ipan Talafofo.
The season of giving is here, and the stations of Choice Broadcasting want to give back. 93.3 The Point, Boss 104, Star 101, and Lux Guam present Charity of Choice. Each of our radio personalities have chosen a Guam charity that they would like to benefit.
And I chose Habitat for Humanity. Tune in daily to see how you can help.
Charity of Choice 2018 is brought to you by Choice Broadcasting Company, Lux Guam, American Water Tech, and the station that gives from the heart, 93.3 The Point.
The Southeast still digging out from that huge weekend snowstorm.
The hardest hit state, North Carolina, where more than a foot of snow fell in some areas, damaging homes and businesses. Governor Roy Cooper is calling the snow a nightmare and a tragedy.
This storm dropped staggering amounts of snow, ice, and rain across our state. A year's worth of snowfall or more fell in some places.
But in other areas, people are taking the snow in stride. Kids and parents both enjoying a day off.
It's nice to have a white almost Christmas. We'll see.
Oh, I love it. As long as it doesn't last too long.
Travel is still a mess, with stalled cars and trucks forcing major road closures.
Fox's Brian Yennis reports 3 deaths are blamed on that storm. China's government says its Minister of Commerce has had conversations with U.S. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin about the next round of trade talks to avoid stiff new tariffs from both countries. Britain's upcoming divorce from the European Union has hit a snag.
Prime Minister Theresa May saw the writing on the wall in the House of Commons.
The deal would be rejected by a significant margin.
May postponing today's Brexit vote, saying she will go back to European Union leaders to seek a better deal.
If you want to leave without a deal, be upfront that in the short term this would cause significant economic damage to parts of our country who can least afford to bear the burden.
Pro-Brexit lawmakers say the agreement keeps Britain tied too closely with the bloc, while pro-EU politicians argue the deal creates barriers between the UK and its biggest trading partner. EU leaders refuse to renegotiate the terms of Britain's exit. Steve Rappaport, Fox News.
Texas is preparing to execute a condemned killer Tuesday evening. 43-year-old Alvin Brazil Jr., scheduled to be lethally injected for the murder of a man 25 years ago in suburban Dallas. His attorney says Brazil should be spared because he is intellectually disabled. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Be merry, be bright, and make shopping all right with holiday gift cards from King's Restaurants. Give a gift they are sure to love. Delicious food and friendly fun at King's. Get a coupon for a free single crate with every $20 gift card purchase. Extra holiday happiness from King's Restaurants. Be merry, be bright, and make shopping all right with holiday gift cards from Chuck E. Cheese's Guam, Ruby Tuesday, and King's Restaurants. Receive special offers with every purchase for extra holiday happiness. See stores for details and have fun this season from all of us at the GFS Group.
Family Finance, serving the people of Guam since 1959. Now you can start planning for the holidays by getting a personal Christmas loan from $1,000 up to $3,500. Family Finance has 3 convenient locations to serve you. Give them a call in Dededo, 633-4473, Hagåtña, 475-4545, and the Upper Tumon location on the 2nd floor of the Pacific Building at 647-5626. Get your Christmas loans today from Family Finance.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is being brought to you by Sanford Technology Group, STG, delivering service that can't be beat.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Shall not be infringed. That's the law of the land, at least as far as keeping arms in your home for your own self-protection. According to the U.S. Supreme Court, you have an individual constitutional right to do that. So we start the program off every day with the Second Amendment. We usually spend a little time with other parts of the Constitution, being one who is a rule of law type guy. I like to make sure that we spend some time figuring out what the law is and trying to make sure that public officials comply with the law. The Second Amendment is one that's near and dear to the heart to a lot of people in our international radio listening audience. I'm going to call them the pro-gun guys. I know that's politically incorrect, but I'm using guys, and it's a conversational meaning males and females. As far as other sexes, I don't know what they think about guns, but I know that there are men and women who are pro-gun. And if one of them were here, I would make sure that I ask them to tell us about it. So as one of the customs of Tall Tales, if I see some newsworthy item out there in internet land, I usually plow into it right after I read the Second Amendment, and today is one of those days. This one comes from the state of New York, and the New York legislature. There's a Democrat proposal in New York that would allow police to go through a year's worth of a person's social media and search engine history before that person could buy a gun. I should have said before they could buy a gun, right? Although New York State has some of the strictest gun laws in the country, we can no longer provide protection to gun owners at the expense of the rest of society. This New York legislator named Parker wrote in a memo attached to his legislation. The Brooklyn Democrat wants local police to be able to examine 3 years of a prospective gun buyer's media posts in 1 year of their search engine history before deciding whether the applicant should get a handgun permit or be allowed to buy guns classified as assault weapons. Yeah, assault weapons. Police would look for commonly known, this is in quotes, commonly known profane slurs or biased language. under the legislation, as well as posts described as threatening another person or anything else deemed necessary by the New York State Police. Parker said he introduced the bill in response to the Tree of Life synagogue shooting in Pittsburgh. 11 people died in the attack. Parker said Robert Bowers, who has pleaded not guilty in the attack, made no secret of his anti-Semitism through social media postings before the October shooting. In addition to the Pittsburgh shooting, Parker pointed to the social media history of Cesar Sayuk, a Florida man who police say mailed 16 bombs to CNN, politicians, and national security officials. And there's another quote from Congressman Parker. We're in a new age with new technology, and we need new rules. So we need to begin a conversation about the way we monitor social media and use that in the context of giving out dangerous weapons that can, in fact, hurt or kill people. Well, this is wonderful. Kind of makes our senators look pretty good by comparison, doesn't it? So I think reading between the lines here, it's, first of all, what Parker's saying, I don't really care much for guns at all. And guns are not good, and politically incorrect people are, of course, we know they're really not good. And you put the two together and you've got a critical mass. So what we've got to do is get passwords and go through social media, Facebook, and all that kind of stuff. And anyone who we find is politically incorrect, no handgun for you. And certainly, horror of horrors, no assault rifle. So it looks like New York is right on, as we would say, the cutting edge of the law. Cutting edge, I suppose, could have two different meanings. Well, one, if this law passes, the only weapon that anyone could be allowed to buy would be a knife. And two, it's revolutionary, so to speak. Okay, so we're going to go from there to Zemi Iklatny. And the headline for the Daily News editorial is, Our View, Police Need Help Solving Fatal Hit-and-Run Crashes. Early Sunday morning, a pedestrian was hit and killed on Governor Camacho Road in Tamuning. This has been a particularly deadly year for pedestrians, with 13 people, more than one a month, losing their lives while crossing streets or walking along roadways. Guam's roads can be hazardous for both pedestrians and motorists. Streets are frequently unlit, and there are few sidewalks. As a community, we either need to fix some of these basic safety problems or develop and enforce stricter laws. Police said the driver who hit the pedestrian on Sunday fled the scene. This is the third time in 2018 that a pedestrian has been killed as a result of hit and run. As in the previous two cases, police are asking for the public's help in finding drivers. We urge anyone in the community who has any information about these cases to contact authorities. In the most recent fatal hit and run, police said that at 3:19 a.m. Sunday, they were notified of an auto pedestrian crash near Hotel Santa Fe. Guam Fire Department medics arrived on scene at 3:22, and police were on scene at 3:26. Boy, they were fast. Police said they were looking for anyone who may have been traveling on Governor Carlos Camacho Road. I guess my problem would be I don't know where Governor Carlos Camacho Road is. Do you, real Joe Cruz?
Sir, I believe that's the road that goes from across where the Tamuning Pizza Hut is at.
Yeah.
Towards the Guam Memorial Hospital.
You mean Camp Watkins Road?
Is that it?
That's Camp Watkins Road. Why don't they say so here?
Is Governor Carlos Camacho Road? Is that the one in front of GPO? I'm confused.
The one in front of GPO is Hospital Road.
Is it?
Yeah. Now people want to call it Paseo Antonio, etc. But
let me see if I can do some research and find out.
Yeah, Carlos. Yeah. Camp Watkins Road. Everybody knows where Camp Watkins Road is, but we have this habit here. We got to go around and changing the names of streets just because we can, I guess. Marine Corps Drive, of course, being an exception. That was a really salutary change. In the most, let's see. Anyhow, the cops responded really quickly. Police said they're looking for anyone who, let's see, the vehicle involved may have frontal damage as a result of the crash. And then we've got the names of a couple of people who were killed in these crashes. And I won't go into that, but...
Shepard just called up and said I was correct. That's the road that goes from the Pizza Hut in Tamuning towards the Ocapales.
That's Camp Watkins Road.
Yeah, but also known as Governor Carlos Camacho Road, I guess. Maybe it's got 3 or 4 other names.
Well, for us old-timers, not only telling us where something is, in order to describe a place, you not only have to tell us where it is, you have to tell us what used to be there or what the name used to be, right? But, I don't know that I'm typical. I still haven't recognized the movement of the Minneapolis Lakers to Los Angeles. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to have a basketball team in Los Angeles, California, and call it the Lakers. Minneapolis Lakers made a lot more sense. So I'm sticking with Minneapolis Lakers and Camp Watkins Road. Okay, now this next one from the Post. This one's got some teeth. So fasten your seatbelts here. New Chief of Staff's mixed past needs a closer look. There were mixed reactions after we reported Anthony Bobauta's appointment as the incoming administration's Chief of Staff. Some supporters of Bobauta and those who question the incoming administration's decision to appoint him felt the story was half-baked for different reasons. At 6 p.m. Sunday, the Leon Guerrero Tenorio transition team announced that Bobauta had been selected Chief of Staff. We ran with that. We ran with what we had on a tight deadline. Yeah, and that's the newspaper business. I like these old movies about newspapers and newspaper reporters where, there's some really late breaking news and the reporter calls it in. He's got a cigarette draped out of the corner of his mouth and he's calling in his story. And then you cut from there to the offices of the newspaper and you hear the editor holler, "Stop the presses!" And you then cut to the press room and you see these gigantic newspaper presses grinding to a stop so that they could get that scoop into the first edition the next morning. So I suppose that must have been what happened here when they got that announcement at 6 p.m. from the Leon Guerrero Tenorio that Bobauta had been appointed Chief of Staff. At 6 p.m. Sunday, the Leon Guerrero Tenorio transition team announced that Bobauta had been selected Chief of Staff. We ran with that on a tight deadline. We knew Bobauta was a key driver in the Leon Guerrero Tenorio campaign, and we mentioned that. We remember he ran for the congressional seat in 2016 and reported that. And it would have been an incomplete story if we didn't mention the U.S. Inspector General report on Bobauta, or Bobauta's initial feat in the Obama White House, which appointed him as an assistant secretary in the Department of Interior. What wasn't in Sunday's press release was Bobauta having been placed on administrative leave and eventually resigning in 2013 from the Interior Department after he was accused of abusing government resources on trips. Now, I'm looking for a post here from Troy, because Troy is really following trips taken by government officials very close, starting out with Mayor Atalik from Saipan, and following up with Governor Eddie Calvo here in Guam. So Troy Torres, I'm looking for your post. I guess I think from going to Candid News, I'm seeing the beginning of another Troypocalypse maybe. But anyhow, going on with his press release, resigning in 2013 from the Interior Department after he was accused of abusing government resources on trips and making what had been perceived as inappropriate comments towards female subordinates. Wow. If that doesn't do it. The transition press release stated Bobauta was one of 3 newly appointed officials who possessed leadership, experience, and innovative spirit to restore trust in our government as we usher in an era of change. It's nice of the future administration at the governor's complex to view Bobauta that way. It's nice. But considering Leon Guerrero made history as the first woman on Guam to soon occupy the governor's seat, it's also worth noting that women who had worked for Bobauta raised concern against him that led to a federal investigation. In 2014, the Inspector General's office report cites an Office of Insular Affairs grant management statement that she felt it was inappropriate for Bobauta to make which was perceived as a sexually suggestive, quote, hot a dash dash, close quote, comment. I'll let you figure out what 2 letters go in those dash dash in the dash dash. A sexually suggestive, quote, hot AXX comment when he sat on her office chair to work on her computer. According to the employee, Bobauta repeated this comment multiple times and was laughing when he said it, the Inspector General report states. In Bobauta's version, according to the report, when he sat in her chair, he told her, "That's a warm A blank blank." I'm going to use, instead of blank, I'm going to say X. That's a warm AXX that you had because the seat is warm. When asked by investigators if he could have said something to the effect of, "You have a hot AXX," Bobauta replied that he might have, but he was only referring to the temperature of the seat in a joking way. The report also states federal investigators interviewed an intern who stated, quote, Bobauta made her uncomfortable, close quote, after he commented on her, quote, sexy shoes. On one occasion, she said, Bobauta invited her into his office and offered her a drink from a bottle of liquor. Bobauta denied offering liquor to the intern, but did acknowledge he kept a bottle of liquor in his office. He told investigators he said, in part, about, quote, something about her high heels, just how high they were, the report states. After the intern told him the the comment made her uncomfortable, he did not speak to her again, the report states. The Inspector General eventually referred the case to the United States Attorney's Office for the districts of Guam and the Northern Mariana Islands. On July 30, 2013, the United States U.S. Attorney's Office declined this case for criminal prosecution, the report states. Still, it's a question worth asking. Is our newly elected governor good with this bar? Now, I read this a couple of times, and I'm not quite sure what was meant by the word bar. In other words, is the editorial talking about raising the bar? Or are we back to the liquor bottle that Babauta kept in his office? Or the fact that the Attorney General's office decided not to prosecute? And the editorial goes on to say that it's okay to make Babauta one of the faces of her new administration only because no criminal case was filed. I guess that's what the bar means. Good with this bar, that it's okay to make Babauta one of the new faces of her administration only because no criminal case was filed, although he did make women feel uncomfortable in the workplace. We hope the incoming administration has an answer. Well, that's pretty interesting, isn't it? And, you know, up until now, we've kind of been conditioned to the point that anybody who says anything out of line in the workplace directed at someone of, I'm probably going to get in trouble saying this, the female sex, has a serious problem in this era of #Me Too. So the editorial makes a point that now Lou's a woman, and Tony Babauta made inappropriate comments. I don't quite know what to make of that. Would it be different if we had a male governor? Would he be less? Would we expect him to be less tolerant or more tolerant? Do women understand these things better? Are we back to this post, day after election? Oh boy, we have 10 females in the legislature. Oh boy, we have a female governor. As opposed to saying, well, we've elected people that we think are qualified, and it just so happens that the governor is a female and the majority of the senators are females. In other words, I thought we were supposed to stop acting like we do things for women because they're women, or we expect things from women because they're women. I thought we had gone past that. That to the greatest extent possible, men and women should interact in the workplace as though there's no workplace difference between them. Now, I'll be the last person to say that men and women are the same, because they're not. But to the extent that they can be treated as same in the workplace, I thought that's what we were supposed to do, not saying, well, she's a woman, therefore we expect this from her. When you label a person and then attach an expectation to that label, there's a name for that. And I'll give you the name for that right after I finish listening to the real Joe Cruz rendition of Take 5.
John Gibson, digging up history. How a pie plate and an oddball invention became an American toy giant. The real story behind well, I'll tell you that right after this. Are you one of the millions who feel trapped by your Obamacare health insurance? If you are, dump it. President Trump has changed Obamacare mandates, and now you can get the health care insurance you need, not the overpriced ripoff Obama forced you into. Call Amy Yarborough, a licensed health insurance broker. She'll save you money and get you the health insurance you need. Call Amy at 817-914-5835. Amy, 817-914-5835. Now back to my story. A guy named Walter Fredrickson was trying to cash in on the 1950s space craze in America. He invented a flying plastic toy he called the Pluto Platter. One day, Fredrickson was selling the Pluto Platter out of the trunk of his car when two young guys who had just founded a toy company called Whammo saw his toy and made him a deal to buy the rights. The Whammo guys figured college guys would love the platter. They were right. They found people on the Yale campus had been playing with a similar toy, metal pie plates. Not wanting to hurt anyone, when they threw the pie plate, they called out a warning, the name of the pie company. The Whammo guys said, "That's it," which is why today you have the Frisbee, after the Frisbee Pie Company. I'm John Gibson, digging up history.
Be merry, be bright, and make shopping all right with holiday gift cards from Ruby Tuesday. Buy a $25 or $50 gift card for those on your shopping list. Get a $15 bonus coupon with every $50 card purchase. Some extra holiday happiness from Ruby Tuesday. Be merry, be bright, and make shopping all right with holiday gift cards from Chuck E. Cheese's Guam. Get a free medium pizza with every $25 gift card purchase and a free extra large pizza with every $50 gift card purchase. Some extra holiday happiness from Chuck E. Cheese's Guam.
Jeff's Pirates Cove, open daily at 8 a.m., serving up hot breakfast with endless coffee and a taste of history.
Now, more Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. Spittin' truth like watermelon seeds at a summer picnic. Call now, 888-TALK, 888-8255.
So going back to the editorial, and the editorial reminding us that our governor-elect is a female, and she is the one who has selected Tony Babauta to be the chief of staff. And the editorial says, but considering Lou Leon Guerrero made history as the first woman on Guam to soon occupy the governor's seat, it's also worth noting that women who had worked for Babauta raised concerns against him that led to a federal investigation. So my point is, does it matter that if Tony Babauta committed misconduct, does it matter that the incoming governor is a female? Do we hold her to a higher standard or a lower standard? Or do we go along with the idea that we'll judge her based on her qualifications? And I left before Joe Cruz played one of the Dave Brubeck renditions that he has. It sounded an awful lot like a Christmas carol, but it's okay, real Joe Cruz. I also left with this thought: when we assign labels to people, when we categorize people, and then we attach characteristics or stereotypes to those labels, there's a name for that. I'll give you an example. Well, you know, he's got red hair. He angers quickly. Or, you know, he's white. Everybody knows white men can't jump. It's called white man's disease, right, real Joe Cruz?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, in other words, you look at a person and you'll be able to tell what he's all about, what his capabilities are, etc. What is the word? What is the term that we use to describe that phenomenon? It starts with a P. The P word. It's prejudice. Yeah, it's prejudice. And the root of prejudice are a couple of words: prejudge. We can prejudge a person just by looking at him and seeing what his characteristics are, what his race is, or what his sex, what their sex is, etc. And then when we make that determination, we attach a stereotype. Well, isn't that exactly what the Post is doing here? Lou's a female, and Tony Babauta's misconduct dealt with females. So, by gosh, shouldn't she get on top of this? We wouldn't expect a man to pay any attention to this kind of stuff. And my point is, I thought we were supposed to have left that stuff behind And if we haven't, isn't that sort of a worthwhile goal? Let me see what I got here for Facebook comments, and then I'll wrap up Zemi Ikotny and go to the card.
Welcome back.
Now, we've got the anchorman of our North American audience signing in here, Ted Lewis in Montana. Ted, I know you got everything. Montana's a big state, but I'm sure you can handle it. And then we've got Ishmael Velez, who signed in, and Jack Hattick, who wants to say half a day Guam. Wow, I guess he thinks he's still in a baseball park and can address the entire park, right? And then Nate Horn commenting on my unwillingness to recognize the move of the the Minneapolis Lakers to Los Angeles, pointing out it makes no sense whatsoever to have a team named the Lakers in Los Angeles. And Nate Horn says, yeah, and the Utah Jazz, formerly New Orleans. Yeah, there probably is no place in the country that's farther away from jazz than Utah. Wow, good point, Nate. Yeah, you could blow your horn on that one, Nate. Very good call. You had a good one yesterday too, and it'll come back to me in just a minute. Brad Hewitt says it took him a while, but he's finally locked and loaded. And he said, I think I missed a good one yesterday. Stand your ground discussion. And Nate says, well, it was stand your ground and cancel doctrine. And if I do say so, it really was good. Any disagreement there in the control room, Real Joe Cruz?
It was a great show, sir. And if he'd like to see it, he could go to the Facebook page and watch it all over again.
That's very true. You could do that, Brad. And I know you're very interested in guns and things like that, but it just goes to show you, you miss a day, and you really miss a lot here on Tall Tales. We don't, we don't talk about things that don't have some importance to someone. Ordinarily, the someone is the folks out there in our international radio listening audience who, by the way, have the ability to be a part of Tall Tales and hear their voice broadcast to our entire international radio listening audience simply by calling 888-8255, 888-TALK. And, of course, we are streaming live on Facebook, and you can post your comments on Facebook. Jose Martinez, as usual, is incisive. Nothing changes as long as the same people over and over in government, most with roots in the Youth Congress. You're absolutely correct on that, Jose. And I have discussed this many times, as recently as yesterday, with a guy who calls in here specifically to tell me that I don't know Jack, that the only way that I can see that the political machinations will change here is if we go to a part-time legislature and break up the political class that controls the island and has controlled the island for a long, long time. And Jose's right. An awful lot of those players came from the Youth Congress. In the 28th Guam legislature, we came pretty close to doing away with the Youth Congress. And in a sense, I kind of wish we would. I don't see what it is that kids, young impressionable kids, are going to learn by participating in the Youth Congress, unless perhaps it's all the chicanery that their role models in the adult Congress, the adult legislature, practice themselves. Especially in this era when an awful lot of folks don't understand basic civics. But I guess that's my prejudice right there. Brad Hewitt says the incoming administration is a recycled soup sandwich. Now, that's quite a mental image, isn't it? A recycled soup sandwich. And glad to see you, Tom Offness. And Ishmael Velez talks about prejudice and profiling and poo-poo. And Carl Nelson wants everyone on the Facebook Live to know that he is in his seat with his quill pen in his hand, ready to take notes. And Jose Martinez says the Youth Congress is a grooming unit. Well, I think you got some good points there, Jose. So, getting back to the editorial here, I've spoken enough about what I consider to be a gender bias that I have detected since the day after election, when so many, especially the Post, wanted to make such a big deal out of the fact that we have we got a female governor now. We got a female majority in the legislature. Isn't that great? Well, it's great. It is great if it's great. If it's not great, if it's bad, then it'll be bad. Females or no females. On the other hand, if it hadn't been for that one unfortunate sentence, I'd say this kind of editorial is exactly what we need. Because the Tony Babauta story, as I recall it breaking in the newspaper, this is just a shorthand rendition of the Tony Babauta story and some of the things that he did and some of the things that he allowed to happen. And when his name surfaced, when the Tall Tales Intel line told everyone on the island that Tony Babauta was going to be chief of staff, I thought, this really tests the accuracy of the TTPIL, Tall Tales Political Intel line, because would a new governor commit such a boo-boo before she's even sworn in as to load up her wagon with all kinds of the excess baggage that Tony Babauta is going to bring to her administration. But I suppose I should feel somewhat rewarded that our Tall Tales Political Intel line called it, even though it seemed illogical at the time. Now, I suppose this is a tribute to a couple of things. Our intel workers out in the field and the decrypting ability of the real Joe Cruz. He saw something that probably caused him to wonder, but, you know, that's what the record showed, so he came forward with it. Good call, real Joe Cruz.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So, given that the Daily News is talking about something that no one could disagree with, we don't want to see any more people, any more pedestrians killed on the highway, whereas the Post, although with a flaw, did have a hard-hitting, edgy, topical editorial. The coveted Blue Star goes to the Post. And as I say from time to time, congratulations, all you guys, all you folks down there in the Post editorial boardroom. I can hear the champagne corks popping from here. Good editorial. So now we turn to the card. And today I'm going to start with something new. I'm going to start with a law lecture before we go into the card. You know, you all realize that Tall Tales is the top-rated afternoon FM radio talk show in the Western Pacific. It's already a really great show, but we're constantly working. The Tall Tales think tank is constantly working on ways to improve the show. Little initiatives like trying to broaden the range of the real Joe Cruz by allowing him to do his Yogi Berra show. And now the law lecture, which I'll get to in a minute, but we've got that. We've got the 34th Guam Legislature versus the people. And we've got the CLTC versus racism. And the key figure in the CLTC versus racism item on the card is a gentleman named Gibson. Yeah. Uh-huh. And then we've also got the Dinga versus SSI, the evil of two lessers versus the left versus free speech, and KKK. You remember what that means. It's not Ku Klux Klan. Do you remember what KKK means, Real Joe Cruz?
The Kathy Kirkigi Kerfuffle.
That's right. Good memory. It's good that you were able to keep track of all of these terms of art that are lingua franca here on Tall Tales, right? Okay, so let me start out with the law lecture here on Tall Tales. I think it would be, you know, we spend a fair amount of time talking about what the law is here on Guam, and sometime talking about what some people would call federal law. I call it national law. But I think it'd be good if we looked at the laws of some of the states. So I'm just going to talk about Alabama and Alaska today, and then tomorrow I'll move on to Arizona and then Arkansas and so on. But in Alabama, it is illegal to wear a fake mustache that causes laughter in church. So you guys from Alabama out there, you better shucks can your fake mustaches. So they're tough down there in Alabama. You know, they set some high standards. And in Alabama, it's illegal to play dominoes on Sunday. What we used to call blue laws. But you cannot, you know, if you're going to play dominoes on Sunday, you better go down to the basement or something like that if you're in Alabama. Don't be sitting out in the front porch with your domino set. Putting salt on a railroad track in Alabama may be punishable by death. Yeah. And finally in Alabama, in Jasper, Alabama, it is illegal for a husband to beat his wife with a stick larger in diameter than his thumb. Oh, that's a pretty merciful rule, isn't it? Yeah. So I would suspect that women in Alabama, I don't know if I don't know if I've ever been to Jasper. Maybe I've been to Jasper, but I have a suspicion that women in Jasper are on the lookout with men who have small thumbs. Now, a little legal history here. A little legal history here. This thing about the diameter of a thumb. There is historical precedent for this. Back at English common law, there were a couple of really famous savants. One was Lord Blackstone, and the other one was Lord Coke, spelled C-O-K-E, but pronounced Cook, not Coke. And Lord Cook promulgated this rule of mercy for the entire English common law area, and that is that a husband could be punished if he used a switch larger than his thumb to beat his wife. Now, back in those days, I've talked about coverture before. Back in those days, the English law held that when a man and a woman married, the doctrine of coverture kicked in. And we'll come back to coverture, and I'll spend a few minutes here on the law lecture for today, and then we'll go on to the card.
Day. This is Maria Lamson and Kayla Ramos, Vice President and Secretary of the Simon Sanchez High School Senior Class of 2019.
And we're inviting you to support our race to graduation in our annual Run with the Sharks 5K on December 22nd.
Join us at the Simon Sanchez campus for raffle prizes, shirts, and all-around Shark spirit. Go time is at 6 a.m.
Pre-registration is available at the main office and on race day. Call 489-8917 or 8172 for more information.
Thank you for all your support. From Simon Sanchez High School graduating class of 2019.
Because I just signed up for a 12-month iConnect plan, I'm automatically entered into iConnect's Connect and Win giveaway. iConnect is giving away a trip for two to Manila with a stay at the new Holiday Inn Express. They'll also be giving away an Apple Watch, Apple TV, more Mabuhay miles, Fitbits, and Beyond the Box gift cards. Go to iConnectGuam.com for details or call 888-8888 to learn how you can connect and win with iConnect.
Conditions apply.
So yeah, Lord Cook came up with this rule of mercy, and back in those days, in the English common law, there was the doctrine of coverture. When a man and a woman married, they became one. But of course, the one was the man. And marriage, believe it or not, back then, and probably for most of its history, was an institution that dealt more with real property than with the L word, love. So coverture, had real property implications, dower, courtesy, things like that. And at common law back in those days, a woman was incapable of entering into contracts by herself. That required the husband because of the doctrine of coverture. But the husband was responsible for the woman's torts, for his wife's torts. So if the woman did something that caused damage to somebody else and the somebody else sued, the husband had to pay off. So, if the wife was driving the buggy down the road and she killed the neighbor's chicken, it was the husband that had to pay for the chicken. So the thinking was that since the husband is responsible for the wife's torts, he has to have sufficient means to be able to keep his wife on the straight and narrow. And in order to do that, well, spare the rod, spoil a wife? No, spoil a child. Yeah, that was the thinking in those days. And there was no limit to the size of the switch that the husband could use in disciplining his wife until Lord Coke came along and said, nothing larger than the husband's thumb. And that's where I'm sure all of us in ordinary conversation would say, well, I don't know exactly how to answer that, but the rule of thumb is that, you say that sometimes, don't you, real Joe Cruz?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, well, now, as
It's a rule
Paul,
of thumb.
okay, I'm invoking the ghost of Paul Harvey. Now you know the rest of the story. So, when you look at the rule of thumb and all of these things, it's really difficult to not identify with the female sex and, a striving to reach some sort of parity with the male sex. I can imagine what it was like back in the time of Lord Coke, when the rule of thumb was seen as a rule of mercy. So that's the rules in Alabama. So if you happen to be in Jasper, Alabama, toss away your fake mustache or hide it. Make sure you don't take your checkerboard out on Sunday, or your dominoes out on Sunday. And if you have any switches in your house any larger than the diameter of your thumb, you better toss them in the shucks can. So we'll take a little trip up here to Alaska, and a little lecture here on the laws of Alaska. So in Fairbanks, Alaska, it's illegal to feed alcoholic beverages to a moose. Yeah, so kind of puts a different spin on happy hour, doesn't it? And in Alaska, while it's legal to shoot bears, waking sleeping bears for the purpose of taking a photograph is prohibited. So if you're around a sleeping bear, you better leave your camera in your car. So that's our law lecture for today. We'll have another one tomorrow. And we move on to the next item in the card, which is the 34th Guam Legislature versus the people. And I'm going to talk a little bit about items on that the legislature is dealing with right now. But the first thing I want to mention here is Tom Atta's bill that would sweep all of the land trust shenanigans under the rug. And you know what Tom Atta did with that, Real Joe Cruz?
Pardon me, sir?
Do you know what Tom Atta did with that bill that would sweep the land trust problems under the rug?
No, I do not, sir.
Yeah, well, let me give you a clue. It's not what he did, it's what he didn't do.
Oh.
Yeah. He didn't put it on the agenda. So he was in such a hurry to get it on for public hearing, and he made speeches that, this will straighten it out. And one of two things are possible. There will be a time during the session that Tom Atta will walk into the hall carrying a top hat. And you will hear a drum roll, and Tom Atta will reach into that top hat, and you're going to expect him to pull a rabbit out of the hat? But instead of pulling a rabbit out of the hat, he's going to bring that land trust bill, pull that land trust bill out of his head and ask to put it on the session agenda. Kind of keep catching people in a situation of being unaware. The doctrine of surprise. But he has another one that I think requires a lot of comment, and that's his bill on signage. And it is a horrible, horrible bill. It's bill number 154, and let's see what I've got here. I'll just give you a brief description of what the bill does. It's necessary to define some terms. One of the terms is freestanding sign. And a freestanding sign is one that advertises a business. An off-premises sign is what I'm looking for. An off-premises sign is a sign that advertises a business that is not proximate to the sign. So here's an example. Let's suppose that I had a business called Bob's Hot Dog Stand. And let's say Bob's Hot Dog Stand was in Aniguac. Now, under the current rules, I could have a sign on the side of my building that said Bob's Hot Dog Stand. I could even have a picture of Bob on it. But I couldn't have a sign in Jigo that said Eat at Bob's Hot Dog Stand. That would be an off-premises sign, and those are illegal right now. Well, Tom Atta's bill would make off-premises signs legal. Yeah. Well, we'll come back to Tom Atta's signs right after that big halftime show we're going to have. It is almost 5 o'clock. It's time for the marching bands, the drill team, the sword swallower, the synchronized card section, etc., and that big round of cannon fire at the end of the show. So I'll see you after the big halftime show.
point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
They won't be coming home. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. The U.S. Marine Corps ending the search for 5 Marines missing in the collision of 2 American military planes last week. Live in Washington, Fox's Jill Nato has details.
The 5 crew members were all on board a KC-130 refueling aircraft off the coast of Japan last week. That plane collided with an FA-18 Hornet during a training mission. After searching since last Thursday, the U.S. military says all 5 on board the KC-130 were killed. Their identities won't be released until after their next of kin is notified. One of the crew on board the Hornet was rescued alive. Another found but had died. The cause of the crash still under investigation, Jack.
Jill, immigration reform and border security will be on the table when the president meets in the morning with Democrat leaders in Congress.
House Republican Whip Steve Scalise told Fox's America's Newsroom Democrats haven't wanted to find a deal on illegal immigration.
We've had bills on the House floor to address the DACA problem, and every single Democrat's voted no on all of those measures.
Ahead of a White House meeting with President Trump and House Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi, Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer issued this warning to the White House.
If President Trump wants to throw a temper tantrum and shut down the government over Christmas over the wall, that's his decision.
Without a deal, a partial government shutdown could happen on December 21st.
Fox's Mike Emanuel. Some Democrats are contending that payments made to women who claimed dalliances years ago with Donald Trump violate campaign finance laws and could be considered impeachable offenses. The White House says the payments were perfectly legal and not connected to the campaign. Britain's parliament will not vote on the deal to exit the European Union on Tuesday. Prime Minister Theresa May admitting the agreement she negotiated with the EU would fail by a significant margin. This is Fox News.
The season of giving is here, and the stations of Choice Broadcasting want to give back. 93.3 The Point, Boss 104, Star 101, and Lux Guam present Charity of Choice. Each of our radio personalities have chosen a Guam charity that they would like to benefit.
And I chose Habitat for Humanity. Tune in daily to see how you can help.
Charity of Choice 2018 is brought to you by Choice Broadcasting Company, Lux Guam, American Water Tech, and the station that gives from the heart, 93.3 The Point.
Be merry, be bright, and make shopping all right with holiday gift cards from King's Restaurants. Give a gift they are sure to love. Delicious food and friendly fun at King's. Get a coupon for a free single crate with every $20 gift card purchase. Extra holiday happiness from King's Restaurants. Be merry, be bright, and make shopping all right with holiday gift cards from Chuck E. Cheese's Guam, Ruby Tuesday, and King's Restaurants. Receive special offers with every purchase for extra holiday happiness. See stores for details and have fun this season from all of us at the GFS Group.
When they take control of the House of Representatives in January, Democrats on the Foreign Affairs Committee planning to investigate the administration's relationship with Saudi Arabia.
In a statement, his spokesperson tells Fox News, quote, the committee is planning a comprehensive review of American policy towards Saudi Arabia, including the administration's handling of the Khashoggi killing. When asked if that includes Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's relationship with presidential advisor and son-in-law Jared Kushner, Engel's office would only say nothing is off the table. On Hannity, Kushner addressed Khashoggi's murder.
I think our intelligence agencies are making their assessments, and we're hoping to make sure that there's justice brought where that should be.
The New York Times reported Kushner has offered the Crown Prince advice about how to weather the storm from Khashoggi's murder. The Times reports Kushner is the Crown Prince's most important defender in the White House.
Fox's Rich Edson. French President Emmanuel Macron has admitted he's partially responsible for the anger that has fueled weeks of protests in France, saying in a televised address that he may have given the impression not to care about the concerns of ordinary citizens and may have hurt some people with his comments. Macron his plans to hike fuel taxes led to several days of rioting in France. A Texas judge has accepted a plea deal that will allow a former Baylor University fraternity president accused of rape to avoid serving any jail time. Stripped of their orange aprons, 4 Home Depot workers fired from a store in Palm Coast, Florida, because they attempted to stop a man from leaving with about $1,000 in power tools he hadn't paid for.
He had the passenger side door open, and he was in the driver's side, and he stuck his whole arm up underneath the seat and said he was going to shoot me. I responded by saying gun, and we all backed away.
That's the now unemployed George Ippolito. Home Depot says their policy is not to confront potential shoplifters. Sheriff's deputies, under no such constraints, did catch up with the guy, and they arrested him. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
For over 30 years, Sanford Technology Group has been helping companies throughout Guam and Micronesia with their payroll, time and attendance, networking, and other information technology services. Our online integrated payroll and time and attendance solution provides the workforce management tools and expertise to make your business more efficient and employee-friendly. For more information, visit Sanford Technology at 335 South Marine Corps Drive or call us at 647-0220 to schedule a demo today.
Here at APL, our core values give the company its heart and soul. Whether it's connecting your business with our global network through our newly enhanced service or investing our efforts into giving back to the community, APL is committed to serving you. We humbly honor the opportunity to find innovative solutions for you and your business. To learn more about our enhanced service, call 588-4651 or visit www.apl.com/Guam for more details.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Sanford Technology Group, STG, delivering service that can't be beat.
So we go straight from that rousing halftime show to the Real Joe Cruz presentation, which someday will probably be national. You'll be able to go to all of the big cities in the United States, to theaters, for a presentation of A Night with Yogi Berra by the Real Joe Cruz. So in an effort to broaden the range of the Real Joe Cruz, who is a top-notch producer right now and a top-notch decrypter when it comes to the Tall Tales political intel line, we're also working on his skills as a thespian. And what we use as a script are the sayings of Yogi Berra. Now, these are things that Yogi Berra really, really said. And you can go online. I've got 50 of them here. There are more than that. And he really had a way with words. That's why I refer to him as the poet laureate of baseball. So what we do is the Real Joe Cruz does his Yogi Berra imitation and reads the Yogi Berra lines. And, of course, since we, well, wait a minute, I'm a little too early, huh? I should do this at the 7th inning stretch.
That would be fine.
Yeah, so anyhow, that's the background, and we'll come back to the Yogi Berra show at the 7th inning stretch. I got mixed up here. It's halftime. We're still playing football. We're not playing baseball yet. Okay, going back to Tom Atta's sign. Tom Atta's bill would legalize off-premises signs. And my example was that if I had a hot dog restaurant in Iguac called Bob's Hot Dog Store or Bob's Hot Dog Restaurant, I could have a sign on the side of the building that said Bob's Hot Dog Restaurant. But I can't have a sign up in Jigo that says, eat at Bob's Hot Dog Restaurant. And neither one of those signs can have flashing lights and moving marquees and all that kind of stuff. That would be against the law. But once again, the Department of Land Management was kind of at the forefront of changing the law by violating it, kind of like the reprise of the Chamorro Land Trust Commission. So the Guam Land Use Commission allowed the construction of a couple of off-premises electronic signs that flash and create images, and you've seen them. There's one at the ITC intersection, and they're coming up pretty quick. Well, those were illegal. And the reason that they were there was that the Land Use Commission granted waivers to the company that put those signs up. Well, the Attorney General came back and said, you can't do that. You don't have the ability to waive that sign law. And the Attorney General was right on point. So what did we do in response to that? Well, in May, Attorney General Elizabeth Barrett Anderson told the Land Use Commission that it had exceeded its authority by approving zoning variance applications for the electronic signs. The approval of the application, she said, was void. I suppose we ought to change the name of the Department of Land Management to the Department of Land Management and Voidness. Seems to be a popular word around there. One of the signs, similar to the large LED sign near the ITC intersection in Tamuning, but taller, is to be built on Pacific Bay Hotel parking lot in Tumon, News File State. The other application allows 2 electronic LED signs to be erected on the roof of the Tassi building in Tamuning. The bill strikes a balance that preserves the ability for business to promote their interest while mitigating the potential harms posed by unregulated signs, Atta said in his release. I'm reading from a Daily News story of the 23rd of July. So Atta and San Nicolas were able to pass a bill that allowed the non-conforming signs to stay there. I'm not going to use the G word there, for reasons I've already explained. And I also found a couple of other interesting items kind of in the Tall Tales morgue, newspaper morgue. According to his 2013 campaign finance report, Senator San Nicolas received a $1,000 donation from Trivision Media. San Nicolas later championed special interest legislation to benefit electric sign companies like Trivision, and Cherry Vision, along with Senator Atta. The legislation, Bill 95, eventually became law. That's the one dealing with the signs that were illegal. Campaign finance records from Senator Atta show he spent $1,000 on ads from Trivision on August 22, 2014. Well, I can understand that. I can remember seeing that ITC intersection sign, driving through there and seeing Ray Tenorio on that sign up there waving. The sign wasn't completely accurate, though, because there weren't a couple of his bodyguards standing over in the corner watching him wave. So so that happened. So Atta spent $1,000 on Trivision ads on August 22. Trivision then donated $1,000 to Senator Atta on August 28, 2014. Easy come, easy go. Just a coincidence, no doubt. So Atta's bill is before the legislature right now, and to me, it's theater of the absurdity. Atta says, according to Atta, the last time lawmakers modernized the island's off-premises signs law was nearly 40 years ago. They weren't modernized 40 years ago. They were prohibited. Back in the 60s, we really got serious about signs, and we said no off-premises signs. The only signs that are permitted are on the side of the building that they identify, and then there are size restrictions, and they can't have moving parts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that was modern legislation, because the idea was to avoid Guam looking like a honky-tonk town. You know, like the Las Vegas Strip, or what driving into Reno and you see all of these signs. That was what was decided we didn't want. But apparently now we're going the opposite direction. And Ada says that the technology of signs has changed so much, so we've got to modernize our signs now. And we've got to make way for these fancy electronic signs with moving parts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think it's just it's for an island that should be very conscious of appearances. I don't see that it's the appearance that we want to create. No, I don't know anything about Trivision, or I don't have much. You know, I don't have anything to do with Trivision or Cherry Media Vision. Maybe if I did, I'd see things a little differently. But it's a long bill. And it takes the whole sign thing in a completely different direction. And I sincerely hope that 8 people will not vote for it, because it's not good legislation. We should go the other way. We should get rid of the non-conforming signs that the Land Use Commission allowed to sneak in. And we should clamp down on all of these off-premises signs to make our community look like the kind of place that people want to visit. You know, you could compare, say, Santa Fe, New Mexico, with Albuquerque. Santa Fe has a very strict sign law as to what can be posted. Albuquerque doesn't. And well, anyhow, I've made my point. It's a bad law. And I sincerely hope that it doesn't pass. The next one that's on the calendar here that the legislature is discussing is Senator Estevez's gender identification legislation, Bill 291. And what Senator Estevez's bill does is this. It allows a transgender with a note from, I would ordinarily say, his or her doctor, but in this case, the other pronoun is far more appropriate. It allows a transgender with a note from their doctor to petition the court for an order changing their birth certificate. And a transgender, now we've defined terms here before. There's a difference between a transgender and a transsexual. A transsexual is a transgender is someone who was born with one set of plumbing, but in their minds they see themselves as actually of the other gender. So a person who could be born as male could see themselves as a female. And if that's the case, a note from the doctor, petition to the court, the birth certificate could be changed so that instead of having an M in the place where it says sex, it would say F. This is Senator Fernandez's bill. And I've talked about it a little bit before. I've got a couple of other things to say about it, but with your leave, I want to use a kind of what I think is a really interesting explanation of what we're talking about here. And to me, what it amounts to is what our relationship is with reality. And I've got an example here that's called Schrodinger's cat. Have you ever heard of Schrodinger's cat, Real Joe Cruz?
I don't believe I have, sir.
Okay, well, it's a little bit thick, but bear with me for a minute. And you'll see how it fits in here. Erwin Schrödinger was a famous German scientist who worked a lot with quantum physics. And one of the fundamentals of quantum physics is that what we think is a wave could actually be a particle. So what's coming down from that bulb up there could be a wave or it could be a particle. And we don't know whether it's a wave or a particle until we observe it. So the reality of subatomic, you know, these super small entities is unknown until they are observed. And the mere observation tends to fix the reality. So in order to demonstrate this phenomena, Schrödinger came up with something called Schrödinger's cat. And I found this sort of humorous rendition of an explanation online, so I'll use it and try to explain. This is by a guy named Bruce Cameron. I was leafing through a copy of Quantum Physics Monthly the other day, and he says it was the bathing suit edition, and came across a reference to a perplexing question posed by Erwin Schrödinger more than half a century ago. If you're like me and had to pay Bonnie Vanderskirk $100 to help you get a D in high school physics, you might vaguely remember the so-called Schrödinger's cat conundrum as being about as interesting as everything else in the class. Erwin Schrödinger asked what would happen if one put a cat in a box and rigged up a hammer, a vial of poison, and a quantum trigger device. If an electron is up, the hammer is cocked, but if it is down, the hammer drops, smashing the vial and killing the cat. So you can imagine this device here, and you have to know a little bit about electrons. An electron can be positioned up or down. So if the electron is positioned up, the hammer falls, breaks the vial of poison, and kills the cat. If the electron is down, nothing happens and the cat lives. So this situation fascinates physicists who call it Schrödinger's humdinger. It seems that Schrödinger postulates that the cat in question is in the dual state of being both dead and alive. A startling theory which causes most physicists to conclude that they need more government funding. So the Schrödinger's cat thing, then the cat is both dead and alive at the same time. And we won't know if the cat's dead or alive till we open the box. Until the cat is observed, we don't know if the cat is dead or alive. Does this kind of sound like Estevis's bill? In other words, if a baby is born, we won't know if he's male or female, right? Until we give the baby enough time to be observed, or perhaps the baby to observe itself, and then we'll know.
For the baby to decide what he or she is.
Yeah, kind of the Schrödinger's cat of public documents.
That makes
right?
sense now.
Yeah. So it's kind of a roundabout way of getting the point across. But a secondary point here is this. Maybe we're really goofing up on birth certificates. Maybe we shouldn't be issuing them when a baby is born. If we're going to have that block on there that says sex, how would we know at the time that the baby's born what sex he is, what to put in that box?
They could put to be determined, sir.
Well, just leave it blank.
Yeah.
Yeah, leave it blank, and then maybe don't issue birth certificates until, you know, people are 18 or 19 years, 21 years old or something like that. That's what I mean by our view of reality. And what Esteves says, now Esteves says that there was an interesting dialogue. I watched a little bit of this on TV this morning. And Senator Joe St. Augustine, well, first of all, Esteves explained his bill, you know, with a note from the doctor, the birth certificate could be changed so that it would properly reflect the person whose birth certificate the issued birth certificate properly reflects the gender of the subject of the birth certificate. And Joe San Augustine asked the question. He says, well, you know, I'm an ex-cop. And when we arrest somebody and we take them to the lockup, you know, we have to disrobe them. And we have to put them, we don't put males and females together. So what do we do with someone who, when disrobed, looks like a male, but their driver's license says they're female? Which cell do we put them in? And Estevez yielded and answered the question, and he said, well, the determiner there would be sex. So you would put that arrestee with the other people of the same sex. And then he went through the difference. He took a long, long time to explain sex and gender and how they differ, et cetera, et cetera. So when I listened to that, I thought maybe once again, we're doing the wrong thing on the birth certificate. Maybe we shouldn't put down sex. Maybe it should be gender. But then again, we're doing it way, way too soon. We got to apply kind of the Schrodinger's principle here, and we shouldn't be issuing birth certificates. You know, kid is born. How does he know what gender he is? I'm saying, excuse me. How do they know what gender they are right after they're born? You know, just being born is traumatic enough without having to decide the matter of gender. So that's Estevez's bill. And I got some other material here. I didn't testify at this hearing. I meant to, but the way my calendar worked out, I wasn't able to. I don't know if it was a conflict with the radio program or what, but I didn't. I should have. But here's an article from a medical legal publication. A long list of medical and legal professionals signed on to a petition urging administration officials to maintain the scientific definition of sex outlined in a memo leaked in October. Signatories included outspoken pediatrician Michelle Cretella and Dr. Paul McHugh, both prominent figures in the debate over transgenderism. The petition included a letter to Education Secretary Betty DeVos, Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar, Acting Attorney General Matthew Whitaker, all of whom belong to departments with influence over the issue. The New York Times leaked a draft memo in which the HHS advised the Education Department, Health and Human Services, advised the Education Department to interpret sex as an immutable trait determined by a person's biological characteristics. What a radical idea that is. Okay, well, we're coming up here in the seventh inning stretch. I've probably, in deference to Daryl Taggarty, I've probably beat up on Senator Estevez's bill and Schrodinger's cat enough. So after the seventh inning stretch, we'll go to CLTC and racism.
Be merry, be bright, and make shopping all right with holiday gift cards from Ruby Tuesday. Buy a $25 or $50 gift card for those on your shopping list. Get a $15 bonus coupon with every $50 card purchase. Some extra holiday happiness from Ruby Tuesday. Be merry, be bright, and make shopping all right with holiday gift cards from Chuck E. Cheese's Guam. Get a free medium pizza with every $25 gift card purchase and a free extra large pizza with every $50 gift card purchase. Some extra holiday happiness from Chuck E. Cheese's Guam.
Family Finance, serving the people of Guam since 1959. Now you can start planning for the holidays by getting a personal Christmas loan from $1,000 up to $3,500. Family Finance has 3 convenient locations to serve you. Give them a call in Dededo, 633-4473, Hagåtña, 475-4545, and the Upper Tumon location on the 2nd floor of the Pacific Building at 647-5626. Get your Christmas loans today from Family Finance.
Well, I kind of jumped the gun, so to speak, on the read-in here to Joe Cruz and his Yogi Berra imitation, but I have a list of Yogi's famous sayings that I got from USA Today, and the idea here is that I will set a scene. The idea is that we are now in the center field bleachers of Wrigley Field, where we wind up every day for the 7th inning stretch, and I set a scene for real Joe Cruz doing his Yogi imitation, and then he will give us the Yogi Berra quote. Yogi, there was a rather strange kind of public demonstration at the ballpark a couple of days ago, and I was just wondering, were they men or women?
I don't know if they were men or women fans running naked across the field. They had bags over their heads.
Thank you, Yogi. All right, that works in pretty well with Estevis's bill, doesn't it? Came out of USA Today. Okay, so before I get into the second half here, I'm going to just take a peek at some of my Facebook comments here. This goes back to the first half, and Ishmael, KKK stands for the Kathy Kakigi kerfuffle, as real Joe Cruz mentioned. That goes back to the time when Kathy Kakigi from the Department of Administration fessed up to moving money out of the Chamorro Land Trust Survey Fund, moving $570,000 out of there to the general fund. And when she was asked, told you shouldn't do that, why did you do that? She said, well, what law do you want me to break? That was the Kathy Kakigi kerfuffle. Let's see, I've got Mike Lemtiaco. I don't know that I've seen Michael Lemtiaco here before, but anyhow, welcome, Michael. And Jose Martinez, as Lou Leon Guerrero put out a statement on how the alleged corruption history of her chief of staff was a non-factor in her decision to appoint him. Good question, Jose. I suspected that the release indicating why his alleged corruption history was a non-factor will be coming out forthwith. I have a feeling that over at the transition headquarters of the Leon Guerrero Tenorio administration, they monitor tall tales every day. And then Carl, the term hasn't even begun, and we're seeing evidence that it's business as usual. For all our sakes, I hope the LG admin does well, but signs like this increase my already cynical nature as far as politics and politicians. Not a good sign. And let's see here. Carl also says, color me cautiously optimistic, and I'd feel the same way if Republicans had a supermajority and held the governor's office. My party loyalty was mortally wounded with the retroactive pay raise smash and grab issue. As Ronald Reagan said after switching from Democratic Party, I didn't leave the party left me. Yeah. And on the subject of optimism, Jose Martinez, my optimism is of a general nature, as I always want my island's leadership to do well. However, I have grave reservations about the incoming slate of our government and how that will be gauged. And howdy, Denise Legaspi and Maria Espinosa. Yes, there can be a second public hearing. It happens from time to time. When after the first public hearing, the sponsor or the chairman or the sponsor and the chairman take the testimony into consideration and think they ought to revise the bill, and significant revisions would move towards a second public hearing to elicit public comment. And Denise was all prepared for the seventh inning stretch. She had her bat and she had her peanuts and Cracker Jacks. So good for you. And Rico Blancafor chimes in, and Shelley Gibson. Good afternoon, Shelley. Glad you were here for the big halftime show. So that's it for my Facebook comments. And I move from here to CLTC versus racism, and tomorrow I'm sure I will get into the DINGA suing Social Security over denial of benefits. That's going to be pretty interesting too. But the widow evicted from lot, the Reverend Arthur Gibson, was among those sitting at the back of the courtroom during a recent hearing in the district court on the federal lawsuit filed against the Chamorro Land Trust Act. The Department of Justice filed against the government of Guam in September of 2017, contending that the CLTA provides preferential housing benefits only to those it defines as native to Chamorros, and it therefore discriminates on the basis of race and national origin in violation of the Fair Housing Act. The 59-year-old Gibson, who works as an administrator at the Evangelical Christian Academy in Chalampago. He is African American and has a stake in the outcome of the case. On June 2, 2005, Gibson married Carmelita Paris. Because his wife was Chamorro, they qualified to lease a Chamorro Land Trust lot in Dedido. Over the years, Gibson built a house on the lot and furnished it for Carmelita and her 4 stepchildren. We raised a couple of the grandkids too, Gibson said. I had help with the floor, pouring concrete, but that was it. No one else helped me. I built that house all by myself. On February 20, 2013, Carmelita died following a heart attack. The Chamorro Land Trust Commission then told Arthur Gibson he had to vacate the property because he was not of Chamorro descent. It kind of stunned me, Gibson said. I didn't have a birth certificate that showed one of my parents was Chamorro. And remember, at this time, Fernando Esteves wasn't in the legislature. Yeah, so if Fernando had been in the legislature, then perhaps he could have amended Mr. Gibson's birth certificate to show that he was Chamorro. End of problem, right? The way to solve any problem is by amending papers. Gibson moved to Guam in 1999 from Portland. I went through a lot to overcome the civil rights infractions that were laid upon black people in the States, he said. To come here and find myself in the middle of it again is disheartening. I thought that was long past. Gibson said he appealed the decision to the CLTC. He was told that if his wife had wanted him on the lease, she would have put him on the lease. She, quote from Gibson, she tried to put me on the lease, but they wouldn't allow her to because I didn't have a birth certificate saying that one of my parents was Chamorro, Gibson said. The lease for Chamorro Land Trust lot on which Arthur Gibson had built a family home was then transferred to the name of one of the Chamorro stepchildren, a young woman who is physically and emotionally disabled, Gibson said. If they're not going to let me be on the deed, they can have a handicapped girl who was in a wheelchair. Put her on there, he said. Anybody comes in to stay here, they have to help her. But then he said another stepchild managed to move her disabled sister out and get her own name placed on the lease. What they did was they talked her out of the property. They talked her into signing it over to them, Gibson said. Gibson said that the stepchildren then sublet the CLTC lease. Okay, not supposed to be subleasing property. Sublet the lease and the home he built on it to another family. He had to leave the house and all furniture and all personal possessions in it. He moved into a room at Evangelical Christian Academy where he has lived since he was forced out. If I were Chamorro, I'd still be living there, he said. Now, no one lives in the home. Well, better no one than somebody who's not Chamorro. He said the sublet deal fell through and the house he built is in a state of disrepair. Arthur Gibson's case is referred to in the lawsuit filed by the U.S. Justice Department against the Chamorro Land Trust Act. On pages 9 and 10, the lawsuit states, quote, at least one non-Chamorro resident of Guam, an African-American man, lost the home he built on a CLTA plot after his wife, a Chamorro resident who received the CLTA plot, passed away. The couple had, over time, built a 3-bedroom home while living in a tent on the property. At a public hearing on his claim to the land, the administrative director and commissioners inquired into whether he was a person that qualified to apply, and specifically whether he was blood Chamorro or an outsider who was married to a local girl. The commission subsequently ruled against his application, evicting him from his marital home. The Guam Daily Post contacted Land Management Director Michael Bora for comment. He declined because the case is a subject of litigation. So that's what happened. Now, the irony of this is that now everybody is saying, I mean, everybody who has an official role in this, the Chamorro Land Trust Act is not racist. It is generational. It goes back to a class of people created by the United States government when they passed the Organic Act. But it's not really racist. And here's an example of how things come down when decisions are based on a characteristic such as, well, you know, here I am again with identity politics. Let's run the government based on identity politics. That way we don't have to answer, you know, we don't have to get involved with any individual judgments. We just prejudge questions. As an individual question, does Mr. Gibson have any equities working for him? Did he do the kind of thing that we'd like to see people do with land here on the island? He moved on. He built a house with his bare hands. and he's living in the house, but we can't inquire into that because the only inquiry is the one that the Chamorro Land Trust Commission made when he had his hearing. They asked him, are you blood Chamorro, or are you an outsider who was married to a local girl? And since he was not blood Chamorro, all of his, all of his equities didn't make any difference, and they moved him out. So some observations here. The Chamorro Land Trust Commission moved at a snail's pace after Frank Uggan, blew the whistle on them when he discovered that road up the side of Mount Barragata, and we found out that the Chamorro, extremely valuable property, one lot worth as much as $700,000, were going to connected people, and that some people who had signed up in 1995 were never accommodated. We found out that the director of the land trust signed one of the leases in two places, both as the grantor and the grantee. We found out that one of the people who was, I think, the real estate manager, saw to it that her sister in the States was able to transfer her place in line to a daughter. And we also found out that this line switching was illegal and void. We found out all these horror stories about the Chamorro Land Trust and the way it was managed. And what did the Chamorro Land Trust Commission do? Nothing. Until they finally came out and said, well, we did an investigation and we found that nobody did anything wrong. And we're going to send a bill to the legislature that will fix all of these horrible screw-ups that we did. We didn't do anything wrong, though. So that was their approach then. But with this guy Gibson here, they threw him out. They wouldn't even let him pick up his own personal stuff off the land, off his property. So here's how it sorts out. With respect to Mr. Gibson, the Chamorro Land Trust Commission and its administration did exactly what they were supposed to do. They enforced the law. And the law says, if you're not Chamorro, you can't have a lease. And the one who is Chamorro cannot convey a lease to a non-Chamorro. So the fact that it was his marital home didn't make any difference at all. He's just an outsider married to a local girl, so he didn't have any claim, any property right in that leasehold at all. So they did what they were supposed to do. They evicted him from that property, and apparently they did it in a hurry. Now, we've heard Tom Atta say that, if we kick people out of those pieces of property because they switched in line or some other irregularity, then we'd have to pay them for the improvements that they made on the land, for the house that they built, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think Mr. Gibson got any money from anybody. Whatever he put into that house is completely gone. But, once again, the Land Trust Commission and its administrators did exactly what they were supposed to have done. Because I've mentioned before that any fixture, I'll come back and we'll spend the rest of the program here on CLTC versus racism.
Because I just signed up for a 12-month iConnect plan, I'm automatically entered into iConnect's Connect and Win giveaway. iConnect is giving away a trip for two to Manila with a stay at the new Holiday Inn Express. They'll also be giving away an Apple Watch, Apple TV, more Mabuhay miles, Fitbits, and Beyond the Box gift cards. Go to iConnectGuam.com for details or call 888-8888 to learn how you can connect and win with iConnect.
Conditions apply.
Chili's 3 for Me menu just got bigger. We're giving you more choices for the same great price. For just $15, you can get a beverage, salad, and an entree. First, choose from a refreshing Coca-Cola, iced tea, or Heineken on draft. Then enjoy a house salad and select your choice of a mouth-watering entree, like our half-rack ribs, Cajun chicken pasta, old-timer burger, personal chicken fajitas, or the flavorful margarita flatbread. So hurry in today and enjoy our Chili's 3 for Me menu for just $15. Available for a limited time. Chili's, more life happens here.
Jeff's Pirates Cove, open daily at 8 a.m., serving up hot breakfast with endless coffee and a taste of history.
So I've got a phone call here, Carlito. I'm going to pick it up. I'm going to spend a minute here with my Facebook comments, and then I'll get to you. And probably going to have to pick this up tomorrow again to do it justice. So Don Ed Kilani. So give compensation to Gibson. How would Native Hawaiians or Native Americans view this issue? I really don't know, Don, but the point I'm trying to make is that does it really matter? Is some great policy furthered here by kicking Mr. Gibson off the property in the way he was kicked off because he's not Chamorro? That's the point I'm trying to make. Wouldn't Native populations stateside have a stake in this legal issue? Therefore, the ACLU, kind of like abortion laws passed in the U.S. jurisdictions? Well, ACLU isn't exactly one of my favorite organizations, but yeah, the ACLU is as pro-abortion as is Planned Parenthood. And I suppose that the ACLU's take on this would be to come in and if Mr. Gibson were trying to get any kind of redress at all, the ACLU's position would be to oppose it. Tedo says anyone living on Guam prior to the enactment of the Organic Act by Congress and descendants is what the Chamorro Land Trust Act followed to establish applicants qualified for the lease. Not so. You had to be more than just living here. You had to have been born here before the Organic Act. And then you had to become a citizen because of the enactment of the Organic Act. And that would not have been Mr. Gibson. And, you know, if the policy of the Chamorro Land Trust Act is valid, then you cannot make an exception for Mr. Gibson. There's a real hard decision that has to be made here, and that is, should the law be set up so that there's justice in the individual case, or should we operate our government based on the concept of group rights? Because we can't do both at the same time. And then Don Ed Kalani says, perhaps Guam law should reciprocate law that targets anyone with land in the CNMI who also wants to own land in Guam. If they weren't born in Guam or in the CNMI, government doesn't want to sell land to Guam residents. CNMI business holdings on Guam will be limited. I don't know, Don. So I got another phone call here. This is Jack. Well, I can't handle both these phone calls in this short
You probably
time.
have about 3.5 minutes or so.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm going to take them in the order in which they called in, except Carlito just rang off. Okay, so I guess once again I'm going to be told that I don't know Jack. But Jack, let's stick to CLTC versus racism this time, okay? Hey, Jack.
Yeah, that's fine with me.
Good.
Someone should take away their pair of scissors over there at the CLCC. They shouldn't be playing with scissors over there.
Agreed.
So, anyways, I want you to, if you can. There's big problems to the CLTC, but for me, property rights is the core of happiness. So, here in Guam, we have homestead laws, right?
No.
We don't have a homestead law.
No.
Homestead laws here in Guam.
No, we don't.
Are you sure?
I'm positive.
So there's no Homestead Act here in Guam at all dealing with homestead.
Not even a little one, Jack.
All right. So what do you think about homesteading?
Well, in a place like Oklahoma, it was probably a good idea when there was a lot of vacant land, and people who wanted the vacant land, people willing to move onto vacant land and do something with it. And it worked pretty well in large parts of the United States because it was a way of developing the land and moving people onto the land. But it wouldn't work here because obviously we don't have very much land. And what land we did have, we've put it all in what we call a Chamorro Land Trust. It's not really a trust, but it's called a trust.
Okay. Well, that's one part of homesteading. The other part of homesteading is like protection, right, for the homeowner in times of financial crisis.
That's not the meaning of homesteading. That
I know exactly what the meaning of homesteading is. It's used to in the early stages to develop the West and stuff like that.
Sure.
And states, especially when you move on the other side of the Mississippi. It was to encourage people to come out and migrate. But when I speak about homesteading, homesteading also, when I was in the military, we were offered homesteading in California, and I wasn't a resident of California, but as part of the military, they offered, hey, listen, if you decide to call California a home, we have some homesteading laws here. And like you said, it's to develop those places that people didn't really live in.
Sure.
And so my point for homesteading is that when I look at it as it is now, as it appears in some places, there is like that sort of protection that the state grants in certain states that allows a homeowner to consider their dwelling as a homestead. And I thought that it was part of Title 21 of Guam Annotated, but I guess I'm wrong. So that's good news that you put out there, that there is no homesteading laws here in Guam. But I venture that the Chamorro Land Trust has been a bad idea, and there's no winners in this thing. And maybe we should visit the idea of homesteading laws here in Guam to protect those that own property, to encourage those to invest in property, for GovGuam-owned lands, to encourage those without land, Chamorro or otherwise.
Well, Jack, what we did when it was decided that the Chamorro Land Trust Act had to be implemented, all the property that the government owned was identified as available lands, except those small pieces reserved by necessity for the government. So we gave away all our land.
Yeah,
there
but
is none.
When I knew that thing was a failure, the point being, when I came to the realization that it was going to be a failure, when Angel Santos ran and said that he will no way sell Chamorro Land Trust land. And what happened when he was in office? He ended up capitulating, and he sold some property. He signed the bill, and the reason why they went up to him said, I thought you said you're never going to sell Chamorro Land Trust. And he said, well, I have some bills, some things that I want to make law, and there's no way I can do it without, compromising. And that's why, one of the reasons is activists never make good lawmakers is that when it comes to realization and real politics, they have to compromise.
It's easier to be an activist.
Yeah.
Jack, we're hearing my favorite song here, so I'm going to pick up on this. I'm going to pick up on this tomorrow, so make sure you're listening, okay?
All right.
Thank you, Jack.